Kellyanne when we can talk to Kellyanne. Professor Brownstein, listen to this. We have Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway joining us right now. Let's get it right from her directly. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning. Hi, Chris.
So I understand what you've been saying this morning, that unless the vote count is certified and verified, Donald Trump is not going to accept the outcome of the election. To many ears, that sounds like a disavowal of democracy, a preemptive strike against an unknown that is unbefitting a presidential candidate. What do you say?
No, I mean, if anybody's added to American democracy in the last year and a half, it's Donald Trump. He's gotten people who are not quite interested in participating in democracy out to his rallies, out to the polls in the primary, energized to vote for him this time. I mean, people always tell pollsters, you know the stats, Chris, that 75% of Americans want to take the country in a new and different direction. Who represents that better than somebody who's outside the system as a successful businessman? You can't legitimately call Hillary Clinton an outside disruptive force, a change maker, if she's been there for decades. But what Donald Trump has said over time, if you take all of his statements together, Chris, he has said that he will respect the results of the election, but everybody, including Al Gore in 2000, waits to see what those election results are. You wait to see what the results are, if they're verified, if they're certified. Al Gore himself called to concede that race in 2000. He called George W. Bush, congratulated him for being the victor, and then called back and retracted the concession.
Right, but
and you know what happened next? We went on for 6 weeks until we found out who the president was. But
that's the problem, though, is that we all do know what happened in Florida, and this is different. Donald Trump is saying right now, with weeks to go, I think it could be rigged against me, so I'm not going to say I will respect it. That's not what happened in 2000, as we both know very well. There was an auto recount triggered. There was a legitimate issue as to who had won the state in a context where we knew at the time that the popular vote was against then Governor George Bush. And it was a state that was run by the GOP at the governor and Secretary of State level. It was George Bush who wound up having to appeal to the Supreme Court to decide the matter. And when they did, that's when Al Gore took the step of conceding the race. This is not an analogy to that. This is Donald Trump saying, if I don't like the outcome, you can disagree, except you said something different. Pence said something different. His daughter said something different than what he said last night. And it sounds not just like whining, but disavowing the democratic process if it doesn't suit Donald Trump's personal preference. Is that right?
Well, first of all, there were two people on the stage last night, and only one of them was whining, and it wasn't Donald Trump. But secondly, if you had had Al Gore in this seat 16 years ago, and you asked him the same question, Chris, if you said, Vice President Gore, if you win the popular vote and you're losing Florida by less than 600 votes, and it will be decisive to the election, will you concede the election?
It's not the situation, though. He has no reason to believe right now, Donald Trump, that it's rigged. He keeps saying this. Look, this is what I think happened, and you can shoot it down.
Well, the system is rigged against him generally. You know that. You see that 96% of the donations from, Chris, 96% of the donations from journalists went to Hillary Clinton. That's an unbelievable statistic for working journalists. I mean, that's a partisan expression of support through your pocketbook.
Kellyanne, I don't even know who's allowed to give money. Certainly, we're not allowed to give it. And this is a man who was made by the media, Kellyanne. I've been getting crushed by his supporters for well over a year because we consistently tested him, Allison and I, on this show. So the idea of being, nasty to him on purpose doesn't wash with me, and you know that.
Chris, nobody said that.
I want to get back to this situation.
I didn't say that.
He keeps saying that the system is rigged. He's using that. I don't know why. Only you may know, although you've differed with it yourself. And last night, he doubled down on the proposition, which is what he often does. But this time, it undermined the fundamental process of our democracy. And why can't you expose that to the light of reason? Why can't you say it was too far? Go ahead.
Respectfully, can I speak today? Thank you. I really appreciate that.
I don't want you to condemn the media as an answer to this question.
I didn't condemn the media. I gave you a statistic, 96%. That's super close to 100%. That's a really high number of journalists who gave their money to Hillary Clinton's campaign over Donald Trump. We know from these, if you just turn on a TV or read the print every day, you know the guy can't get a fair shake. But all that aside, if you want to talk about who has disrupted and disrespected the underlying principles of American democracy, let's ask the lady who was Secretary of State, where they were using it as a concierge for foreign donations. Let's ask the lady who is allowing collusion between the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the State Department. I mean, it's outrageous to think this person who said we went from dead broke to being a quarter billionaire selling what? Access to the government, undermining our democratic principles. But you guys don't want to talk about that. There was so much talked about last night. What about Donald Trump challenging Hillary Clinton, her just ignoring him? Challenging her to give back the Clinton Foundation money that has been taken from countries that disrespect women, that, as Donald Trump pointed out, Chris, throws gays off of buildings, disrespects women. She never even replied. Do you think today that will happen? Do you think anybody at CNN will ask people at the Clinton Foundation, where men are paid much more than women,
but don't you
if they're going to give
understand
the money back? I doubt it.
Kellyanne, the suggestion that what we should cover is something that we have known and covered for weeks and months should take supremacy over a man who's about to be president of the United States if he wins an election, saying, I won't accept it. I won't accept it if I don't win. Fundamentally, that's what he said. We've never heard it before.
Chris, he did not say that. Chris, he did not, excuse me, he did not say, I won't accept it if I don't win. He said, let's see what happens.
He said, I want to keep you in suspense.
Let's see how close it is.
The GOP head, Reince Priebus, all these different GOP lawmakers came forward and said that was wrong. Laura Ingraham said he has to say that he'll accept it unless there's another Florida.
And I said yesterday, I've said I'm his campaign manager, his running mate, his daughter. We've all said the same thing. Absent widespread fraud or indices of irregularities, but please don't say he said, quote, unless I win.
He didn't say it. He said, I won't tell you
that.
until then. He didn't say what you said either. He didn't say, oh, look, if there's a huge irregularity or something like that, like Florida, then we have to look at it. He didn't say that. He said, I don't know. I'll look at it when it happens. I want to keep you in suspense. He didn't say what you said.
So he was supposed to give 10 or 12 different hypotheticals to prove his point?
No, he was supposed to say, I accept the outcome of the election because we want a peaceful transfer of power. And then, if there's some God forbid that happens, like in 2000, you deal with it when it comes. You don't undermine the system before you come to that. Isn't that a fair statement?
Chris, I think you're just asking me the same question over one long segment, so I'm sure that if I turn on CNN all day, that's basically what I'll see. But I think the voters learned a lot last night in 90 minutes. I've answered it, his daughter answered it, his running mates answered it, and more importantly, he's answered it. And honestly, if we're going to just let Hillary Clinton lie her way through last night's debate and talk about one issue today from a 90-minute debate, I think the voters will decide for themselves. But they saw a real contrast last night, real choice. Hillary Clinton was on her heels for her extreme, outrageous position on abortion. Abortion anyone, anytime, anywhere. Every pro-choicer I know doesn't support abortion in late term the way she does. She was on her heels on the Second Amendment. She was held to account for her position with the hot spots all over the globe. I mean, if you've been there for decades, you own the problems we have. Every time she talked about poverty and health care and hot spots around the globe, my God, who's been there for decades? And Donald Trump's right. All talk, no action. Well, people have a real choice here. Change or more of the same.
All right. Kellyanne, I'd love to keep talking to you, but I know you have a lot of media appearances this morning. I don't want to blow through our window.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Allison.
Thanks.
Okay.